तं विनाशकारणम् नमामि विघ्नेश्वरपादपङ्कजम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Welcome everyone to this wonderful, much awaited webinar. Before I introduce my guest, I want to talk a little bit about myself, me, Dr. Sahila, your host tonight. I'm the founder of Wellness with Sahila. I'm an internal medicine physician, living here in the US for about 15 years now. I'm also a yogi, author of many books. My specialization is chakra healing, and I spread my knowledge like this through webinars, classes, books, podcasts, and also I teach for the Hindu University of America. So as a physician trained in US, my goal is to integrate modern medicine with principles of yoga, chakras, and meditation into my practice. So I address not just the physical, but also the emotional and spiritual aspects of the illnesses. And my goal is to improve the quality of life and also promote overall well-being. What truly energizes me in my passion is my passion to help others and unlock their fullest potential, empowering them towards personal growth and overall well-being. And that's what gives me immense joy and fulfillment. So with that introduction, I'm honored and excited to introduce the guest for tonight, Nikunj Trivedi ji. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
He is the president and co-founder for CONA, which is Coalition of Hindus in North America. It's a grassroots advocacy and civil rights organization dedicated for improving and understanding Hinduism in North America, safeguarding the interests of Hindu community and empowering the Hindus of today as well as the future generations. Now, Nikunji has been involved in education, advocacy, and civil rights for almost 3 decades, and frequently speaks on national and international forums as well as media outlets. He's a former chairman and president of Hindu Students Council, one of the largest Hindu student organizations in North America. He is also serves on the board of trustees there. He works in the financial services industry in New York and lives in New Jersey. Like me, I also live in New Jersey. I have a supporting spouse, 3 wonderful kids, and I have been in New Jersey ever since I immigrated here in 2002. So with that introduction, welcome. Nikunj.
Namaskar. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's begin with straight away with your organization, which is the main purpose of this webinar. What is CONA and what are its purpose and your role?
Sure. So CONA, as you mentioned, is Coalition of Hindus of North America. We started 4 years ago, and the idea was to empower Hindus from all walks of life. The whole point was there's a lot of misinformation about our culture. There's also a continuous propaganda that shows our culture as inferior, oppressive, but does not value the contributions of our great civilization. And when that type of misinformation and sort of bias is mainstreamed, it has an impact on how we perceive ourselves as Hindus and also how other people perceive us. So with that in mind, there have been a lot of issues that have been going on. When something happens in India, for example, the diaspora is blamed, even though the kids who are born and raised here have nothing to do with what happens sometimes there. We are blamed for things like caste systems and so many different issues. So the idea was to empower Hindus to address this misinformation through providing them tools and resources, whether it's webinars, whether it's training, but also making sure that they're having conversations with people who have on the political side, school administrators, all the way from city council levels at the local level to the federal level, so that when people are making policies, when people are talking about us, they're not talking about us without us. So that's really the idea of what Kona does. And over the past 4 years, we've been become a truly an, North American-based organization, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, and we have chapters in Canada and things like that. So in short, the idea is that Kona works for a better understanding, advocating for a better understanding of Hindu heritage and tradition, and empowering the community through advocacy, civic engagement, and community engagement.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that brief introduction. And I just saw that on your Instagram page. I think you're also, one of the ways is that you're working towards granting a festive holiday for Diwali.
Yeah. We just,
Yeah.
as you saw, today was the final. We've been working with the local community in Broward County in
Yes.
South Florida for probably over a year and a half, almost 2 years now. And they've been pushing for Diwali as a school holiday. There have been challenges there, which we don't need to get into, but the bottom line is they were successful and we were able to help them get a Diwali as a school holiday in Broward County Public Schools. So now 250,000 students are going to get a day off. It's not called Diwali because there are certain things about separation of church and state, but the school was able to accommodate a holiday that appreciates the culture and sort of embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. The DEI stuff in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
really very important. And we worked in New York City with various organizations to do the same, the largest school district in the entire U.S. So we've been working on these types of initiatives across the U.S. and even in Canada.
Wonderful, wonderful. So nice to hear that. And also it gives a very empowered feeling even for the children here who want to celebrate the festival, right? So
Correct.
that is very important. So today's topic is identity crisis in today's youth. So I know a lot of parents and youngsters are here. So instead of straight away diving into identity crisis as a spiritual seeker and having been writing books on yoga and chakras, I will take just 2 minutes in explaining what is identity so that parents and youngsters can understand what this conversation is about. So there are two forms, spiritually speaking, from the Sanatan Dharma. There are two forms of identity, the primary and the secondary identity. Now, when we talk about primary identity, this is what has been predestined even before we are born. And there are 5 forms of primary identity. 1, genetic framework. 2, our physical appearance. 3, our family, the siblings, parents, grandparents. 4, birth details, place of birth, time of birth, things like that, and the name that has been given to us. Now, these 5 forms of identity are the primary identity, which is predestined, and you or me have not much choice. So what we have to do is accept primary identity with humility and also feel graceful and adopt those methods and use it to build the secondary identity. Now, the secondary identity is what most of the youth here are familiar with, which is our education, our career, and future relationships. So what is identity crisis? So identity crisis happens when there is a discrepancy between our primary identity and our secondary identity. So when we are not completely understanding our primary identity, if we are not completely accepting it, or if we are not completely in par with that, then and we are still confused and trying to understand. And then if we try to build a secondary identity without getting familiarized with the primary identity, then that is where a clash of identity happens and it leads to identity crisis. So with that introduction, I will let Nikunj share his personal story about his daughter and what kind of challenges he faced, having coming here to study, right? You came here at a much very early age.
Yeah, when I was 15. Yeah.
15, yes. So if you can
Right here in New Jersey. So
yes, if you can share your personal story and challenges that your family faced so that, all of us can get more familiarized.
no, I think the framework that you laid out, Dr. Sahila, is really, really important. I think, there are two types of things that you mentioned, right? What you are born with, let's say, things that you
Yes,
not really cannot control, and then what you are growing up with, right? And when those two are not in harmony, a real crisis happens. And we see this play out in so many different ways. In the Hindu community, for example, and this is who we are really focusing on. Let's say, for example, you immigrated to the US, right, as a first gen. Now you have kids who are born and raised here. So when you
yes,
were born, not as in you, Dr. Salo, but you as in a general Hindu coming
correct.
from India, let's say, or anywhere else, but let's say from India, you were born and raised in a particular place, particular time situation, and a particular upbringing. So now you have your cultural biases, you have your cultural upbringing, your understanding of the world according to that. Now you come over here, two things happen. Number one is your understanding changes. What you are in the beginning doesn't change, but your understanding changes because now you're exposed to a new culture, a new way of education, new way of a career, all those things. Now, the second part, your kids, right? Now the kids are born here. Now they have certain identity that they have, been born with, like their names, their cultural background, things like that. But they're now born in a different environment, which is the United States of America or the West versus India. So they are now starting to think about what is my identity or who am I, right? I am connected to this so-called culture of these people who are foreign, right? But I'm born and raised here. My skin is different than the other people. Like you said, right? Your physical appearance, your name, so like someone like Nikunj, my name is very different than a Jack or a John or, some kind of a name that is very mainstream in America. So right there, I'm sort of the other, right? So that's where I feel it really starts to germinate, right? When you are in that kindergarten, right, you start to have kind of a different, hey, my lunch is different, my appearance is different. My people around me, I speak in a new accent, but my parents speak in a different accent. So you start to internalize that. And I feel that now all of a sudden you're questioning that, do I really belong here, right? And that's in kindergarten, maybe you're not starting to see that, but sometimes, and I'll give you an example in a second with what happened with my daughter, you start to question that, hey, who am I really? And why am I like this? Why can't I be like them, right? Why do I have to be this skin color or why do I have to wear those clothes? So coming to that point, my daughter, for example, was in, I would say, third grade or something like that. And she was going to this private school, majority sort of white community private school. Even though we're in Central Jersey, this private school had a majority. There were a couple of Indian brown kids, let's put it that way. Um,
Mm.
so she sits down and she used to, when she was a little kid, she would take lunch from home, right? And, she basically opened her lunchbox. And one small girl, she goes, ew, your lunch smells, right? It smells like poop. That's what she said.
Wow.
And so my daughter was shocked because she's like, wait a minute, how can that be? Right? It's like this is my lunch. But of course, that little girl was not intentionally saying that. She just like because she may have learned something or she's just not familiar with the smell or whatever the case was. So all of a sudden, my daughter kind of like cringed, right? And she started to say, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I want this or not want this." So she came home with the lunch not eaten that day.
Mm.
And we're like, wait, why didn't you eat? She's like, oh, I wasn't hungry. And we asked her, and then slowly, we started to talk to her, and then she opened up, and she said, oh, they said that my lunch smells and stuff like that. So then I had to sit down with her and talk to her and say, hey, this is who we are, and that's where I started to realize that okay, this is going to be a long journey in sense of this continuous questioning of the identity, right? And so those types of things. So next time when that happened, she was much more stronger to say, hey, if you have a problem, get out of here. Like I want to eat my lunch and I have the right to eat my lunch. So this was again in a kindergarten, the third grade level, not in a higher level. So once, but the thing was, if I did not intervene at that time and I just said, oh, don't worry about it, things like that, I felt that it starts to internalize that, okay, I don't have a support system. And we'll talk about the support system afterwards. So I felt that that was the right time to intervene. And a lot of times parents tend to dismiss that because they don't want to create problems. They don't want to cause a controversy. They don't want to, oh, I don't want to show, oh, we are like, oh, what are they going to say? These teachers or these principal or whatever, what are they going to say? But right away, we addressed it. And actually, the teacher was very happy that we addressed it because she said that this is the right time because it's important. So what they did was they actually taught a class about this. And they made sure that they talked about different cultures and different foods and how one culture has a different food that can be looking differently, it can be tasting differently. So they basically created a whole education about this. So, there are examples that we will continue to see, but this is the reason I bring this example is because a lot of parents I have talked to face very similar things. Heck, I faced this thing in high school, right? When I came to the US. But what ends up happening is that parents do not understand the challenge of growing up in dual identities for these kids who have this Hindu slash Indian slash Caribbean, whatever background, but they're born and raised in America. So they're trying to make sure that they're also American. So their identity crisis really starts at that young age. And it's important for us to recognize as parents. But also, if we need help, we come to experts like you to say, hey, how do I deal with this, right? And this is a small example, but then I'm sure bigger examples that are with families who have faced a lot of bullying and a lot of things, which we will continue to talk. So I just thought I'll share this and start our conversation on this particular topic with this idea that identity crisis really starts at a young age. It's not something that happens. It's like I would say bottles up, right? It comes in. It's like a series of things that are happening from a very young age. And if we do not address that, we will continue to have that problem. And ultimately, it boils over into something much bigger, psychological issues, mental health issues, so many different things.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Nikunji, for sharing that really heartbreaking story, especially at that tender age for your daughter. How is she dealing with this now? Is she much more comfortable?
Yes, yes. She's a lot different now. Yeah, of course, she's 13 now. So, that was many years ago. But over the years, like she's learned to kind of counter that, deal with it. She could care less what other people think now, because she has become a lot more confident in who she is. And plus, she loves food, home cooked Indian food, or whatever you want to say, certain types of food. So she's like, I
Yes,
don't care what you think, this is my food. So that
yes,
happens too.
yes.
But I think it's also important. And this is just about food, right? The other part you also find is questioning of your identity, like, ew, why do you have that stop sign on your head, right?
Yes.
Things like that, or why do you have funny gods and goddesses, right? There's so many different questions that come to kids. And I'll share my example, which many people in Kona know that I share many times on public forums. So I came here when I was 15 years old. Okay, here's a guy who was born and raised in India, comes here, sits in a American classroom, and this girl turns around and says, "Do you eat monkey brains for breakfast?" Okay, I'm like, "Did I? What are you talking about?" Right? So she goes again next day, "Do you eat monkey brains for breakfast?" Now I'm like, I don't eat any brains, obviously. I'm a vegetarian, but I started to question why she's asking that, why she keeps saying that. And then I realized that she was actually bullying me in a way. Like she was making fun of me for who I am, and she's like talking about this monkey brain stuff. And I'm like, but why specifically monkey brains? And if you know the Indiana Jones movie, so there was in English class in a break time they were showing us movies, and they saw a shot that we saw the Indiana Jones movie, and here's the shot of everybody sitting on the table eating monkey brains. And so that's when I realized that this girl is actually referring to that episode, and she's projecting that about all Hindus and all Indians in that sense that these people are crazy. They have weird gods and goddesses. They're eating monkey brains and things like that. So but the thing was, if I did not have a support system, if I did not have a good network of people around me, my family, I wasn't confident in my Hindu identity. In a way, even I was shaken up, right? I mean, this is coming from like a foreign culture per se, but what I realize is there are a lot of kids who don't say anything. They
Mm.
internalize it, right? So it's like they go home, they live a different life, right? The five things that you mentioned is what they live at home. Their family, their name, and then when they go to school, they live a different identity, one that is sort of not, they're not comfortable with the one what they're born with, or very uncomfortable. So they'll just say, no, 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 I'm not really this. I'm not really Hindu. I'm atheist. Like they'll there's this identity crisis of being atheist nowadays, which we can also discuss. But the reason I'm saying that is because what you pointed earlier, Dr. Sahila, that these two identities often clash with each other, right? And when they're not in harmony is when you start to have real psychological problems. And so I thought I'll share this example with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this, Nikunji. So let's, for the purpose of letting the people understand what happens when identity crisis occurs, because the children are now going to say, I'm having identity crisis. They are
Yes.
going to express this in different forms of distress. The most common thing that I have seen that they present with is altered identity. Like you said, right? They will say, I'm atheist, I'm this, or some clan, some altered form of identity, or going into a cocoon, depression, because they're not able to express, anxiety, insomnia, confusion, staying aloof from the parents and family because they feel as if they are embarrassed, to associate themselves with their family members. So these are all very serious issues for the family and for the siblings and parents to deal with. And they if they don't know these things exist in schools and colleges, the parents are blanked out. They're like, what went wrong with my kid? Why is she or he, who's so smart, getting very good grades, and suddenly behaves very off, aloof? So these are the things, are warning signs for parents here to look out for. So these are something that you have to watch out for, talk with them, teach them these values. I keep harping on these with my kids. I have 3 teenage kids, and they get so tired of me talking about these again and again. In fact, I've made them, all of them, to sit in their room and listen to this webinar, because it is so important that even though they hear it from me, when they hear it from Nikunji, it might register very differently, because you come from a more experienced background here, how you faced high school, colleges. It's more personal, So I wanted them to listen to you. So thank you
Of
for
course.
sharing this. And Nikunji, coming to the next question, what do you think as parents should do to prevent or to address this kind of issues? What is your viewpoints on that?
Yeah, no, I think I'm really happy that you laid out the symptoms. I think, before I go in, why don't you repeat the symptoms? Because I think
Yes.
it'll be really, as a doctor, it's very important for you to give us what are the symptoms of something like this?
So they always come out with some fancy form of identity, like you said, atheist or some clan. They will join some clan, or they will be confused. They will stay aloof. Depression, signs of depression, anxiety. Not they get very nervous very easily because they always anticipate something bad is going to happen or somebody is going to say something about their food or their dress or their name or something. And insomnia, not able to sleep. So these are all some of the warning signs for, for people, for parents, especially, to look out for.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I agree with you because I've been working with students for many, many years. Like I was involved in Hindu Students Council, I still am. And I also sometimes, when I was meeting with students, you'll have these conversations, and you're right. To be very honest, like with all the stuff that I do, my daughter herself may not listen to me as much as she may listen to you, because it's like not dad saying this, right? So it's always
Yes.
there. So I tell parents that, look, first thing is you need to observe, as you said, observe those symptoms right from the beginning. Is your child all of a sudden, it was happy-go-lucky, was excelling in academics, all of a sudden starting to go down, right? Number one, is
Yes.
he or she staying aloof, wants to be always, and teenagers tend to, or like other kids tend to, of course they want their space, no doubt about that. But at the same time, are they spending too much time in their room, just like doing nothing or just sitting around? Has their creativity gone down? Do you see less smiles on their face? All of those things, I agree with you. And so I tell parents, first of all, you need to continue to monitor that, right? Number one. But I also think that conversations need to happen. Don't avoid it, because a lot of times kids come to me, right? A lot of kids have come to me. They're like, you know what? My parents don't want to have this conversation with me, because they just tell me to go and study. They're like, oh, forget about all this stuff. You need to focus on your academics and things like that. So there's a vacuum, right? And if you don't fill your love and your understanding and your dialogues and conversations into that vacuum, unfortunately, anti-Hindu propaganda or garbage is going to be filled into that. And we have seen that. So a good example is, many times there's a conversation happening in school curriculum. They talk about India in a certain way. They'll bring up caste system. They'll bring up all these things to show a negative portrayal of our culture. So when kids come home, sometimes they don't even want to talk about it. And parents have no clue, because they're like, oh yeah, he's doing good in math, he's doing good in science, great, everything's well. But unfortunately, people may not like this, and I'll say it, identity is not formed by math and science. I'm sorry.
Very
It's
true.
not formed by math and science. It's formed by social studies and perceptions of who you are, psychology, many other subjects that are not STEM type of subjects like biology or math. I'm sorry to say, if this is a rude awakening for people, let it be. But identity is formed by knowing who you are. Math is not going to let you know who you are. I'm sorry. What is going to tell you is history. Why do you think American history is taught so much? Because America is proud of its history. It wants to say this is our identity. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of these things are taught very fundamentally to show a true American identity. Similarly, they teach about civilizations. And when you look at all the civilizations, they put India or Hindu civilization down, and that has an impact. So now what happens is, so parents will basically play the role saying, okay, no, 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 don't worry about it, beta. Just go and study, everything. Just ignore it. Just answer whatever you want. The problem with that is that builds on to something that goes onto social media. Because what the kids are going to do is they're going to go and try to find, because they're curious, they're going to try to find answers online. They're going to go to TikTok. They're going to go to Instagram. They're going to go to YouTube, and they're going to try to find these answers. Sometimes they find good answers, sometimes they won't. But if the parents are not having those conversations at dinner tables, or just, going out for a ride, going out for like a meal, going on a walk, saying, what's going on? Let's talk about this. And I'll tell you, if they don't do that, these kids continue to find this type of question answers elsewhere. If their friends are similar boat, they're all going to be in the same identity crisis. And that's when they start to say, you know what, I don't want anything to do with this culture, because it's not relevant for me. Okay. And why should I go to the temple? It's not relevant for me. Why do I need to sit there for 4 hours and do some some pujas and things? It's not relevant for me, because my back hurts, my legs hurt, and there's no benefit for me. So why should I even be doing this? And most parents won't have an answer except for getting angry and saying, no, I told you to do it, so you better do it. Right. And that creates a lot of tussle. So it's a vicious cycle that goes. And so I tell parents, first, establish a dialogue. The second thing, as I mentioned, is have that conversation that is relevant to them, because it's not about your conversation. It's about their conversation. And I'll give you a small example. So my daughter is quite anti-woke. Okay. She has, for some reason, she has developed this idea that, there's a lot of things that are going on that are not right in terms of how different things are talked about in the mainstream and everything like that. And it could be because of conversations we've been having. So now what happens is when I want to have a conversation with her, I bring up some of these topics, and it fires her up because it's like, okay, a conversation that's relevant for her. And then I start to insert conversations around what's going on with Hindus around the world, whether there's Bangladesh, for example, this human rights issue that happened in Bangladesh, how that impacts us, why this is important. So sometimes you have to mix conversations, right? And my cousin actually, kudos to him, he actually did it with football, right? They just kind of had a conversation with just football, playing around, talking, watching the Giants game or whatever games they're watching. And in the middle of it, he'll bring up something. Hey, did you know this happened in Kashmir? Or, this is something that happened. You're like, oh, what? So there's that, you're going down their level playing field, what they're interested in, and then you're having a conversation. You cannot be sitting on your chair and your pedestal and having that conversation from your level. You have to come down to their level, literally to their level. And it could be at the kindergarten level or at the college level. And you have to also understand, to build that trust is really, really critical. So that comes back to the point that you mentioned, Dr. Sahila, about the fact that these two identities coming together have to, now I know we talked about this before, so let's come back to the point that you had mentioned, like, how do you firm that identity that you cannot control, right? How do you come back to that? So the 5 things that you mentioned, how do you kind of harmonize with what you learn? What are some of the practices that you talk to parents about in terms of, like, yoga, meditation, all the stuff that we were talking about earlier? Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So Sean, can we show a little bit about our programs? So for the viewers here, so I'm starting this Brahma Muhurtam challenge. So as many of you know, Brahma Muhurtam is the time period which is 1.5 hours before sunrise and ends 45 minutes before sunrise, and is considered to be an ideal time for practicing any kind of spiritual practice, whether it's yoga, meditation, journaling, book reading. And it's supposed to be, even in scientifically, when you map the alertness level, the peak alertness, scientifically speaking, so reaches at the time of Brahma Muhurtam. So this is not only for the youth, even for parents. So can you play that video, Shan?
Nice.
Yeah. So can you also show the slide what it includes? So what I try to do is, I give a lot of perks so that people are motivated to not only get up early, but also I provide them books, podcasts, and additional yoga sessions. So all these are offered. So this is something that will be useful to start 2025 in a spiritual manner, not only for your personal success, but for your professional success as well. And majority of the successful people today, whether it is Indra Nooyi or even who's that? Jeff Bezos and people like that, they also talk about mudras. There's a lot of videos that are circulating. The latest chess champion, Dukesh, all these people talk about how spirituality has helped them succeed, how spirituality helps them connect with the outer cosmos, with their inner cosmos, how meditation helps them develop confidence and help them understand their inner self, particularly the chakra meditation. So all the primary identity that I was describing, the 5 forms, they come from the first chakra, Mooladhara chakra. So that is what keeps us grounded, because that is the earth element. Mooladhara is the comes from the represented by the earth element. The second identity that I was talking about, your education, your career, your future relationships, even the romantic relationships, they all stem from Swadhisthana Chakra. So that represents your creativity, how creative you are in, presenting yourself and challenging yourself, how creative you are in your relationships. All these things are from the Swadhisthana Chakra. So all these things you are going to learn in the 21-day Brahma Muhurtam challenge. Why 21 days? Ancient wisdom, like yoga and Vedanta, has always time and again told us that any practice that sticks with us, that if we practice for 21 days, it becomes part of our karmic memory. So, as you all know, whether it's Sadhguruji or Sri Shiji, whoever that you follow, they all talk about karmic memory. So, instill this practice in your kids. They, even though they may be just practicing for the flexibility or because they enjoy, unconsciously, these practices get imprinted in their memory, and they are going to continue that after 21 days. And whenever they face challenges of identity, confusion, or bullying, or depression, not able to handle stress and pressures, these are the practices that are going to come and save them, because we as parents cannot be watching them 24/7. So teach them and allow them to take part in these challenges. And for every challenge that I teach, I provide a lot of data and science to it. My books, my podcasts, I think some of my students here can, who have taken courses, can vouch for that. Because I've practiced medicine here for 15 years, I know what it takes to explain the youngsters about this. So,
No, this is great. No, this is awesome. I think it's
yeah,
really, I think I give examples of a kavacha, like in Sanskrit, they
yes,
have a word called kavacha. It's not just shield, but it's the shield of different layers, right? Spiritual shield, shield of protection from Bhagavan's grace, so many different things. And all of these practices and act as the kavacha for us
yes,
to
yes,
protect
and
ourselves from all negativities across the board. So
yes,
I'm a
yes,
big believer of these things because I've practiced it myself. I do my pranayama on a regular basis, and
very,
that really helps quite a bit. Meditation as well. But
yes,
what's really important, though, as you mentioned, I think today's youth face a real psychological, pandemic. I look at it
mm,
everywhere you go. Different people, even adults. But so these practices. Why do you think a multi-billion-dollar CEO, right, takes up something like this, right? Because there is benefit behind it. They have, like you said, they have learned to increase their productivity. They can do this. Everybody has 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? CEO, the president of the United States are no different than any other human being. They don't, Bhagavan doesn't give them 48 hours a day. It doesn't happen. So how do you maximize those 24 hours? And that's what they do. So they have learned these skills, like you said, and they have learned it from, you know, sort of these new age gurus sometimes. Like, I'm not talking about our people. I'm just talking about some, person sitting around. But if you look at it, like you said, if you go deeper into it, I think it's really, really helpful. And you have to start young. I think
yes,
both. And what's really important is you can't be a hypocrite. I'm sorry, right? You have to do it yourself. You can't tell your kids, say, hey, go and do it. I'm going to drop you off to a yoga class. The yoga teacher is not your babysitter, right? You have to do it. If you're teaching your kid a class, you go take a class.
true, very
And then
true.
you spend that time and say, you know what? On a Saturday, we're going to do this together and make it fun, whatever you want, engaging, have a conversation, make it a group thing. Maybe some of your friends, friends of friends, whoever they are, maybe you're going to that yoga class with Dr. Sahila. Maybe there are other parents who are also involved in that. Maybe that's and somebody asked, like, what are you doing for identity crisis, And I would say this is something that we recognized a while ago. And one of the things that we started was the Beautiful Tree program. And it's not focused on yoga and meditation, but the idea is to give students who are in the middle school age information about our great civilization, our culture, that doesn't get taught in schools. And that is a big nexus of anti-Hindu propaganda and this identity crisis that results in negation of all that is good in our culture. So if someone who's been taught by the teacher that your culture is inherently bad and gets reaffirmation in New York Times that your culture is inherently bad, no matter how much yoga you teach that person, it doesn't matter. Why does it impact Indian Hindus or brown Hindus? I'll tell you why. Because Tim Cook or a random white person doesn't have, or another ethnicity doesn't have to bear this burden. Okay? They're not being taught that their culture is shameful in a class. So they'll take up yoga and meditation because they have no inhibitions. They have no other issues. But the moment you are taught that the only good thing about your culture is maybe nothing. Maybe you guys, created some culture, this and that. But what is bad is a long list of things. In today's schools, and you can talk to your kids, Dr. Sahila, there is zero conversations when it comes to Indian history and civilization classes about yoga and meditation. There's no coverage, even today. So we realized that, and we started this beautiful tree program within the Hindu Parents Network that allows students to learn about all those things before they even get to that level. I call it in medical terms inoculation. So we inoculate the kids with the antibiotic before they even get to that point, right? That's the one thing. Second thing is partnerships with folks like yourselves, right, out there, to talk about these things and offer as resources, both for parents. And so we have a course for parents as well, where we talk about these issues and what parents can do to learn more about it. And so bringing people like you, having these conversations is really critical because parents now have a resource to go to and have these conversations. They can listen to these YouTube videos, reach out to us, reach out to you, and say, hey, you know what? My child is facing this issue. How can we get help? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's very deep, so it's not. Sometimes you can't just put a message and expect answers. It's a longer process. So it's a layered, multi-layered problem. But nonetheless, I think there are tools available, like you said, the 21-day Brahma Muhurta Challenge and other programs that you're running, and many other great teachers who are running out there that are acting as resources. So I personally, I want to thank you for this type of initiative and that you're doing, because I think it's really helpful for our generations to come, but also today's generations, parents, even adults can take that and then become more relatable to their kids.
Yes, definitely, Nikunji. And why this becomes a very important subject today is when we are integrating intellectuals in these programs. See, earlier it used to be Gurujis talking about this. But today, all the CEOs, all the big people are into these spiritual practices, whether they like to admit it or not, that's different. So when people like Nikunji or me, a professional internal medicine doctor, are coming out and saying that, yes, these are crucial practices, then the youngsters are able to connect with it. So that's the, and I'm grateful to you that you being in a very high profile, stressful job in New York City, which I know because my husband does that. So I know how stressful it is. And still, amidst all that chaos, you're coming out and talking about this, spending your energy, your valuable time and commitment to this. So hats off to you.
No, this is actually, to be very honest, this is actually a de-stressor for me. I look at this. This is my therapy at the end of the day.
Yes,
Seva
yes.
is my therapy. Doing this
Totally.
work is my
Totally.
therapy, because what it allows me to do, it allows me to think every single day when you wake up in the morning, right? There's this thing that comes in your mind.
Yes.
I am this, I am this, I'm going to go do my job. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When is a moment in your life when you think beyond I?
Very true. Very true.
This is the fundamental reason why I do what I do, because
Mm.
it allows me to think higher than myself. That I am nothing. I am just a number at my job. I am just a Nikunj Trivedi who will one day die and disappear, right? But what is beyond me? Beyond us is where we have to think, right? Because that's where is going to uplift us, right? The
Mm.
idea of heaven and hell, all those things are not really relevant in the from our framework. For us, it's always going upwards, uplifting. Uplifting is towards higher consciousness, higher reality. And for me, this becomes a sadhana that allows me to say, you know what? I am serving our community, our dharma, and that is higher than me. This ego that I have, ahamkara that I have, that I don't matter at the end of the day. What matters is the greatness of our dharma. What matters is the greatness that we have collectively. What matters is Paramatma, because this Atma needs to be united with the Paramatma at the end of the cycle that I am in today. Right? So when you start to think from that perspective, actually, so like I said, this is not stressful for me at all. This is therapy for me. So at the end of the day, I really, really look forward to doing this stuff because, all the other stuff is a means to an end for me. But
Correct.
this is more this if this is the stuff that grounds me, my Muladhara chakra, right?
Yes.
That allows me to be in at peace with who I am in the middle of the chaos that I deal with. Sort of like that Kurukshetra where Krishna says in the middle of why did he decide to say the Gita in the middle of chaos, in the middle of war? Because that's a life lesson for all of us. That today we all face chaos in our lives,
Yes.
small chaos, big chaos, it's always going to be there. What we have to do is seek the help of our great civilizational tools like our meditations, yoga, pranayama, dhyana, all kinds of things, bhakti, that allows us to do things that are higher than us. And when we do that, it allows us to say, all these things, these waves of life will keep coming and going. Identity crisis will keep coming and going. What is always going to be there is dharma. And what we have to do is come back to it and embrace it. Rather than avoid it, embrace it, and then spread it amongst people so that they learn that they can also be happy, they can also be confident, they can also be radiant by accepting and embracing this and not shying away from that identity that they have been born into. So that's the
Very,
reason why we do what we do.
very true. Thank you so much, Nikunji. Thank you so much for that wonderful message. Also, for the parents who are listening here, I always quote Karna as an example for identity crisis because there may be still confusion as to, what is this? Is this a new generation problem? No, the problem has been existing for generations, but at different levels. So Karna, if everybody recalls, was in a low caste upbringing, and he lied to Guru Parshrama that he was a Brahmin to acquire the great archery skills. And he was already blessed. He had this kavacha, the kundala, which is activating his concentration power, his intelligence. But still, he wanted to be more powerful than Arjuna. So he wanted to, he lied. And when Guru Parshrama found out, he cursed him, saying that he's going to forget all the things that he learned at a very crucial time in his life. And this is what led to the defeat in Mahabharata. And not only that, Karna, after that, he always was seeking for validation, external validation, even though he had so much power and intelligence and gifts and talents. He wanted external validation. So he always used to join with Duryodhan, and he refused to listen to Krishna. So he ended up, on the wrong side of the war, and finally leading to an untimely death. So identity crisis has always been there, and if we don't resolve it early on, it is going to lead to more and more confusion, adharma, like what Nikunji said. You're going to be on the wrong side of the war, and probably face worsening challenges. So that's one crucial example that parents can quote the story, to make children understand that it is not a new age problem. It has been there. It has been there for at different stages in different people, and today it is taken a different form in US or in North America, I should say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it continues to be because people are not, like I said, like you said, grounded in their roots, and
Yes,
they're avoiding one identity, the base identity, which is 95% of whatever you are, right?
yes,
You're not whatever the ratio is. It may be something else, but point is, it's a huge majority of who you are, right? I mean, you can't even control your own breath, or you can't even control your heartbeat, right? That's your identity is already baked in.
it's
So
already.
imagine if Bhagavan said, "Hey, okay, I'm going to give you control of your heartbeat." Now all of a sudden you are on a smartphone, you forgot that you need to have your heartbeat. Instant death. So you have to. It's a silly example, but it's relevant because we think that we know a lot of things. We think that we already can conquer everything, but buddy, 99.9% of the things we don't even control.
We don't.
So
Yeah,
we
that's why
better
there
understand
is
and
a
accept that
term.
identity of
Yeah,
ours.
yeah, there is a term prarabdha karma for
Part of
that,
the karma,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, so we are just born with prarabdha karma, and we are
Living it out.
living it out, and what we live is going to, how we decide to live today will determine our future, and hopefully we can live that with more clarity, more focus, and less of confusion. So that is the
Yeah.
goal of this webinar. Let's see, Sean, are there any questions anybody is asking for me or Nikunji? I'm not.
Sahila ji, this
Yes,
is
yes,
Neelam.
yes,
You know me, right?
yes, yes.
So
Nikunji is
it's
also a
very,
physician
yeah,
and
it is very
one.
interesting topic. The identity crisis is a big problem here, especially when they go to college and the youth are
Yes.
Yes.
studying. So, I mean, one of my family member has a crisis about height and all that, short height. So, how do like my other kids are tall and then this one is short, and he has a crisis. He keeps saying that people don't like me because I'm short, and he's here listening to. So, what can you tell him about that?
So a short meaning
The height.
compared to, yeah, I understand. But short is like compared to what, right? If you
So
compare
that's a
to
primary. That is also primary identity, right?
a primary identity, right?
You
See,
cannot change,
you,
right?
you have to accept it, and it is only relative, right? If I compare myself to somebody else taller, then I'm going to feel short. But if I see somebody 5 feet, then I'll feel like I'm taller. So it's a very relative thing, right? So how can you satisfy, or in other words, how tall can you be to be happy, right? There is there is no limit to it. It's like saying how rich you want to be happy. There is no answer to these things, because these are all as we were discussing, is prarabdha karma, and all these have been set for us before we are born. So we have to accept it humbly, whether it's our height, whether it's our color of the skin. A lot of people have that. I'm not fair enough.
Yes, some
Yeah,
people.
my nose is very big. My eyes are very small. So
Yep.
yeah, these things, there is no end to it. Where can we start? My hair is short. My hair is, I don't have hair on the head.
Yeah.
There is like endless list of physical appearances that, God has made us all beautiful, unique, and we just have to highlight the positive things we have, and things are going to come to me. If I know I'm beautiful from inside, I don't need a validation from 10 people telling me how beautiful you are or how tall you are, right? So it has to come from me, from within me. Yeah.
Thank you. And then my question to Nikunj is,
Mhm.
that was beautifully explained everything, and it's very interesting.
Did we lose her?
Yeah, I think, is she on mute?
Okay.
Ah,
Is
Yeah.
there a course you recommend where youth can join and help themselves?
A self-help course, you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, they can like they're lost about the culture and all that, right? So is there
Yeah.
a course your organization is offering?
Yep. There are
And
multiple places. So yeah, it depends on the age group. So
uh-huh.
if you are, let's say, for example, in the middle school age group, you can join the Beautiful Tree program. You can go to hinduparentsnetwork.org. There was a link posted in chat by Agrima. You can
Mhm.
sign up for the Beautiful Tree program. There's a winter camp actually coming up soon for that also. So it gives you, it goes through stories. It tells you about the greatness of the civilization, and I have a story for that too, actually, how that started. So I'll tell you. I'll take
Mhm.
30 seconds of that. So this was during the pandemic. So we started Kona in the middle of the pandemic. Okay, people were saying you guys are crazy. Why would you start an organization in the middle of the pandemic? April of 2020, when the pandemic was in full swing, we started Kona. So in that year, everybody was home. So in December of 2020, people were, there was winter break and nothing was going on. So my daughter and I were having a conversation. Okay. And she's like, Dad, why don't you, we started Kona and you're doing this. Why don't we do something that educates kids about who we are? So I was like, okay, why don't you go and create something? So, she was quite small. So she just pulled out a PowerPoint slide and she decided to create a little graphic about our culture and stuff. And at that time, it gave me an idea that we need to have a program that is focused on creating the beauty of our culture. So we started a program called The Beautiful Tree. If you ever read the book called The Beautiful Tree by Dharampal, it's about the educational system before the British. And Gandhi ji talks about how the British cut down the beautiful tree. That's where the word beautiful tree comes from. So the beautiful tree is the banyan tree that has roots all over, right? So the idea was to create this program that combines history, combines basics of Hinduism, combines things about like how to make things relevant. Characters like you said, Karna, for example, right? There's different characters of Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. So that was geared towards middle schoolers specifically, some high schoolers, but really middle schoolers, because of what I mentioned earlier. They start to have this kind of inferiority feeling ahead of time. That's number one. The second thing is um, for the adults, we have Hindu Students Council. So if your son or daughter, if your child is in college or in high school, encourage them to start a Hindu Students Council, or they can join Kona Youth Action Network Cyan. But it's mainly for people who are interested in advocacy. But if your kids are interested in celebrating our festival, celebrating our culture, if they should join a Hindu Students Council on college campus, they can also join it in high schools. There's also Hindu Yuva that's out there. So if there's no HSC on campus, maybe there's a Hindu Yuva. So find a support system. That's really, really important. People like you on campus are really important. So there's also Chinmaya Mission for kids who are at a certain age, right? Bala Vihars. So have some kind of a system that your child is meeting like-minded people. Because again, 90% of this conversation is they will forget about everything about Hinduism. What they will remember, I made this great friend who's just like me in that class. Okay, and that is I would say panacea for 90% of the issue. And Binduji put on the Tejas book competition. This is also very important. This is going on right now. 14 to basically young age youth essentially are targeting and reading about Indic civilization and history. We just did a program with them recently through our youth network also. Bottom line is become part of an ecosystem. Okay, the ecosystem that feeds you positive information and positive vibes. Because if you're part of a group of friends that could care less, okay, doesn't matter, or you become part of something and then you facilitate that within your kids. Okay, so I would say for the person who was feeling that you're short or tall, we come in all heights, all shades of colors, all noses and all hair and whatever you want to say. What is going to shine about you is how you present yourself, how you can confidently stand up and say, hey, this is who I am and this is my culture. Some of the greatest people in the world are some of the shortest people in the world. Okay. And it doesn't matter. It's relative. Like, for example, Hindus or Indian Americans tend to be on the shorter end of the curve, just average height wise. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Other people might be taller. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing either. So sometimes people are too tall because they're like sitting around. I have a niece who keeps complaining, saying I'm, much taller than the rest of the people. And I'm like, okay, here's another problem. Okay, now I'm too tall. So you can never satisfy based
I
on
know.
exterior things. What's really
Yeah.
important is how you can carry yourself, how confident you are, what you can be as a human being, as an individual with great promises.
Yeah, focusing on the talents, that
Yes.
also helps, if
Thank you.
whatever your son is interested in, let's say he likes to paint, or let's say he likes to sing, or whatever talents,
Yeah.
ask him to focus on those talents and
Mhm.
develop on that. So that will be the way to bring out confidence.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar. Yes. Thank you
Anybody
again.
else? Questions?
I wanted to thank both of you for such a wonderful, very structured webinar where you addressed both sides, the experience and the solution. And what I see, person like me who came to this country in 1990, and my kids are like 627 and 30. We went through without having this kind of support. So now I give my time to my local young parents who are facing this problem. And I think that more than 1990s, things have becoming more vitiated more and more. And very rightly, what Nikunj said is that there is no discussion, there is a zero discussion about the beautiful and the major contribution from this civilization, which is the oldest civilization. So I mean, it's a struggle, it's a challenge, and I'm very, very appreciative of what Nikunji has been. I'm seeing him day in and day out doing this thing. So wonderful. And thank you, Dr. Sahila ji, for, also contributing to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Binduji, for your kind words.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else with questions? Anything you want to comment or add?
I think 3 people raised their hands, so maybe
Oh,
Jay can
okay.
go first.
Okay, yeah, please. Yeah. Who's next?
I do have a quick question about HUA. So, are there any focuses or initiatives when it comes to like critical fields, maybe like law, yes, but like education or like specifically the humanities? Because I think it's very important to like train people in these subjects and then send them out into these fields. Like like I know I'm like one of the rare teachers that are Hindu in Chicago, and like one of my students thought I was Mexican actually, but so like if we can get more of our community in these very important, impactful fields, I think that's important, but train them in a way that's like not just humanities, but like our own humanities, because I went through our entire college and they didn't actually even have, or my entire history degree, and there actually wasn't a single class in our department on Indian history. I learned it through the Hindi department. So, I think if we could, if there's some kind of initiative like that, that would be great. Because I have heard about Sanskrit there, but I don't know too much about HUA.
I mean, you should contact HUA directly. I can put you in touch with someone there if you want.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I
HUA
say
has been-
something? Can I say something about it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Binduji, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would also say same thing as Nikunji said, that you should reach out to Hindu University of America. They do have, what I wanted to say, they do have very good courses that might interest and might be a positive, understanding of, or right understanding, not just positive, right understanding of the civilization.
Yeah, that'd
Yes,
be great. Thank you.
they have various courses on Sanskrit, Rig Vedas, Hindu civilizations. I teach chakra healing and pranayama practices there. So yes, there are various courses. You just have to go to their website and browse through their programs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Who else raised the hand?
Krishan Chabra.
Very nice program. I must say, Dr. Sahila, nice to see you and hear you
Nice
again. I had enjoyed your course, if you probably remember.
Yes,
And
yeah.
yes, Hindu University of America offers a lot of courses, and I have attended a few of them. I'm very happy. And as for Nikunji, it has been wonderful. There's one thing which you have said, which I would like to emphasize. Since I came here in the 70s and I have raised my children, and now we are raising the grandchildren and so on and so forth. One thing which you said, which stands out, I think, is the keep the lines of communication open as your children are growing up. As they grow, there are times when you feel like, I don't know what is the right word with them, because you reach a point that things are very hard even to talk to each other. However, as they grow, keep the lines of communication open. It's very hard to do it, but if you do it, they will be with you. Treat them as your friends, not as your child or this or something. So as exactly as you said, think, work from their level, and things will be fine. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the class. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Krishan.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
greatly said. And thank you for sharing your insights, because you have experienced that journey since the 70s, 3 generations, yourself, your kids and your grandkids now. So
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very valuable information. And thank you for taking the time to attend this.
great.
So should we call it
Yeah,
anybody
I think
else?
so.
Yeah, I think we'll end it here. The recording will be posted if anybody wants to share it with your families, neighbors, friends. And thank you all. Thank you again, Nikunji.
It's my
Hope we
pleasure. Thank you for having
we
me.
should connect again at another camp or something like that
Yes.
for the youth. And I am
Great.
Dhanyavad.
Hari Om and Shubhratri to all. Thank you.
Great topic. Thank you.